everybody, Hella here, and I have a wonderful guest, and Dolly here. Dolly, not a guest. And I've also got Sarah. Sarah says hi. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today's going to be really interesting, because Steve, my fantastic guest, who is a death penalty certified defense attorney in Florida, and also is the author of several very important textbooks. Death penalty debates was the first one, I believe, but he can talk about them in a moment. His link, I have some mods here that are putting his link up to his website where you can buy his books. He's very well regarded in the legal community. Students of law, they read his books. I have read a few of them. Death Penalty Designs is a fantastic one. If you just want to get your head around the way the process works, when the death penalty is put on the table right from the start, and it talks about how the process changes once the state decides to pursue the death penalty. Now, I wanted to get Steve on today, not just because I haven't seen him for a while, I wanted to say hi, but also because I wanted to discuss this whole plea deal and how these plea deals come about, and the fact that there was a plea deal for Bryan Kohberger, for example, but no further evidence was really put forth. Lots of people question, how come they didn't make him give evidence, like make him provide something that only the killer would know, so that some more answers were available. And that would have been wonderful for people like me who question whether he actually even did it, but then also for the families, like the Gonsalves family, for example, are very upset that there is no closure whatsoever. They never get to finalize what happened to their daughter, right? So also, they wanted the death penalty, and they thought that they were going to have that sentencing hearing to determine whether or not they could have that highest punishment for Bryan Kohberger. But no, they feel like they were let down in that regard. So I want to bring Steve in, and Dali, let's go. Hello.
Hey.
Hey, Dali, and welcome, Steve. Welcome back.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me on and thinking of me and remembering me. And Dolly, good to see you. And I will tell you, I want to thank you personally for when I was down and I was being persecuted in Miami. You did a great show about like what happened to Steve Gosney, and I was muzzled by my job. They would not let me address what people were saying about me, and it really that diktat really hurt me. But, you know, and everybody asks, well, what happened? You pretty much nailed it. I mean, the only thing that I couldn't say was that I couldn't talk about it. But there wasn't anything that happened except that I wrote a book and the Miami Herald defamed me, and a bunch of nasty Miami defense lawyers got together and attorneys and libeled me online and took away my career in criminal law. So now I'm doing civil law. But you were excellent. I'll never forget you coming up and telling the truth about what was going on and being very objective and fair. And I'll never forget that. So thank you. You're great.
No problem. Like I don't like bullying. I don't like cancel culture. I don't like it when people just decide to go after somebody. You're a good man and you would do anything for anybody. And I could tell that what was happening with you was defamatory, like you say. They were defaming you.
Absolutely. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And people have no idea.
And you couldn't say anything.
And I was muzzled, and that really hurt me because I couldn't defend myself against libel and slander and defamation. And then the mob, the woke mob, started going and circling because I'm kind of, I love your kitty. I was sort of I'm sort of an oddball. I'm a conservative Catholic, right? Yeah. White male from outside this area. So I became a very easy target for the left-wing cancel culture mob. But, you know, the thing is that I'm a very strong advocate for prosecutorial ethics and I'm a very much an anti-death penalty person. And I saw an opportunity in here in Miami. They had some problems with a prosecutor named Michael Van Zandt here, and he was, I think he resigned, but kind of resigned, and he had done some very, very bad things in Miami.
He had.
And the prosecutor was infected with this. And so I saw an opportunity to really come in and make a difference in a major U.S. city where, it's easy to criticize and throw stones about prosecutors. That's easy to do, right? Or defense attorney, or criticize the system. But to one thing I can say is, although I didn't succeed, I did make the effort. I put my money where my mouth was, and I made the effort because they really needed me when I had to offer here. And it didn't work out for circumstances outside my control. But I can look myself in the mirror and say, I tried my best. I did what I thought was right. And I stood up when other people did not.
You did. You tried to move over to the prosecutor's side, which in itself was difficult, but you tried to go in and clean up the prosecution.
I was a prosecutor
in Miami-Dade.
I was a prosecutor for 6 years, and I went to the defense side for 14 years. So I was, I'm ethics. There's a very specific way the system should work, and I'm a bit of an idealist.
Yes.
My cat, by the way, looks a lot like your cat. He's a techie like that. And here, can you hear him meowing out here? He is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm getting distracted. I wanted to thank you because, and if anybody has any questions, I can talk about it at this point. So, but nothing happened. And this is the problem with defamatory, with libel, because people think, oh, there must have been something there. Why did he get fired? I made them fire me because they didn't have a right to fire me. They had no reason to fire me. And, and so I'm not going to quit. So because I didn't do anything wrong. It was the mob cancel culture that came after me. And I'm really sad. And one of the things I really wanted to accomplish there was I wanted to do a Brady list. I wanted to do a Brady policy for the prosecutor's office, a model Brady policy that we could replicate across the country, because, I write law review articles and policy man. And you'll see, if you go on SSRN, there's a couple of the policies that I drafted when I was at the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office. And I'm proud of those policies, and they're all for the public. For any prosecutor can adopt those policies. In fact, one of them was developed in relation to the Courtney Clinic case, if you look at it, which is pending. But anyways, I want you to, I don't know. I'm really, you were just so good. And I mean, there's few people that really, but the thing is, people naturally, they think, well, something where there's smoke, there's fire. He must have done something wrong. There must be some kind of internal thing. It's like, no, I never had a problem. I never had a problem with anybody. Nobody in the entire office or outside ever called me and said, Gosney, I heard you wrote this. What's the deal? Nobody ever confronted me about anything. It was all anonymous, backstabbing bull.
That's what happens when you get bullied.
Oh, yeah.
I want to thank EDW Raptor for the 5 Excited Utterance memberships. My boy, my man, you are coming in with subs every single day. I appreciate you. Vice Baby, Mr. Gosney, one of the best men out there.
Vice Baby, and I'll say Vice Baby's dad was, I miss, of all the people on the internet, I miss him the most. And I it's kind of odd. I will say that I don't think that I don't know if I ever expressed to him how much I appreciated him. He was such, he was just sort of a friend and a fixture. And maybe this is a good reminder. If you have somebody who's a friend who you rely on every day, like Dolly here, right? EU and Dolly, tell them now, you know what? I really appreciate you being my friend, and I love you as a brother, because, you don't know, they might be taken from you. And Vice Baby, I've gotten to know him a little bit now that his father's gone, but he's a really neat kid. He's a softer, gentler kind of guy. But I really miss your dad, Jeff. So for what it's worth.
R.I.P. to Jeff. And David, making it all simple. This is for Steve and Steve only, even though this came through my chat.
She's not. Yes.
Nice to see you. All right, let's get into this. So, the big topic that has been on everybody's channels, everyone's been talking about, is the plea deal, right. Bryan Kohberger's plea deal. Okay, so it came as a shock to me. It came as a shock to a lot of people that there was a plea deal. There's a lot of people still who believe that Bryan Kohberger did not commit this crime, or if he did commit this crime, that he's not alone, right? So he's not a sole perpetrator. There's many reasons for that. I don't need to go through them all at the moment. It's a list a mile long. But let me just say that even the prosecutors now are going on many channels talking at length about the fact that really they had nothing except that DNA, which is transfer DNA on a knife sheath, which is not the murder weapon, right? So they themselves are walking back all of the circumstantial evidence.
No, I wouldn't say that. Okay, so we're going to disagree here. You tell me. Okay. I'm going to let you go for a while, but you tell me when I can jump in. Sure. Because the first thing is you're saying that they're walking back the evidence. Okay, what they are doing is they are justifying their life in prison plea deal. They're not saying he didn't do it. I don't think they're saying he didn't do it. Now, I haven't watched everything.
No, they're saying he didn't do it because he said it in court. So they're cool with that now because they've got him saying that now, right? But what they're saying is they have no evidence that that was his car, right?
Yeah.
They've said that.
The prosecutor's quote was along the lines of, without the DNA, it would have been very difficult to get a conviction.
Oh, I think that's absolutely right.
He said that, but also in the sentencing, after the sentencing, he got up at a press conference and he said that there was no connection between Bryan Kohberger and those victims and that house. None.
Well, but that just means he's a stranger on stranger serial killer, which does happen, but it doesn't mean that. I mean, it's very, very rare. Most murders occur with people that know each other. But on the other hand, serial killers do not operate that way. That's why they're so fascinating. It's like watching, it's a rubbernecking kind of thing because it's bizarre. But there are people out there who are serial killers who kill strangers for fun. We had a guy in Daytona Beach when I was growing up, a guy named Gerald Stano, who killed upwards of 60 people. And he's the most bizarre person. He didn't, why he killed everybody. He did different techniques and different motives in different places. He was a very strange person, but and it's like, but those people, they're very, very rare, extremely rare, but they do exist. And I think Kohberger, for whatever reason, wanted to commit these murders and he tried to get away with it. And I think that the DNA, if without the DNA, I agree, it would be just a circumstantial case. And without the DNA, I would also say that I think it was probably there was a reasonable doubt. And he had a very high chance of getting a not guilty because there would be a lot of reasonable doubt in the case. Now, but there is DNA. And now there's two problems with the DNA. And this is why I think that the state, and I'll go ahead. I told you, I teased you, I said I have a theory.
Keep going. Yeah.
There's two DNA related reasons why I think that state offered life in prison without parole and took the death penalty and made that deal. The first is it is touch DNA, and there might be expert witnesses who will come in and challenge the methods. Okay, but that's not the big issue. I think, and this is Gosney off on a limb on the diving board with no cost to me, right? But I have a suspicion that how did they originally identify Kohberger as a suspect? I think they derived the lead from public databases.
Yes,
they did.
And there is and now they eventually picked the garbage up and did the DNA off the father from the garbage. But how did they know to go to that garbage can, that father? because they had
23andMe.
accessed some public databases to get the DNA. And I don't think they wanted to parade that out and challenge that and either one, make bad law involving all of our privacy, or two, lose it. Or you see, or lose the case. So either way, because Idaho would have likely, they may have gone and said, well, we're not going to suppress this because they're going to have some kind of exception. Now our privacy rights have been eroded. I think that's really what was going on there.
The judge did rule that it could come in, but
no, he didn't. He really couldn't.
But it's the danger of creating bad precedent here.
Okay,
because
they
didn't have. Here you are. Let's reverse time back to when the police were investigating this case. They've got 4 dead kids and they don't have any leads. They have this sheet and they have this DNA, but it doesn't match anybody, and they're out of leads. All right, and there's all this pressure: solve the crime, and there's a serial killer on the loose. Well, what else can we do? Well, we could search these public databases, but it's kind of iffy. Do it, because we got to catch this guy. It's kind of the ticking time bomb problem. And so then they get the lead, and they do it, and they solve the crime, and everything's good. Now he's in jail, and now we're facing the thing and bring the death penalty. But now the lawyers are looking at this case, and they're saying, well, this is dangerous for our citizens' privacy rights, dangerous for the case, because the judge may have been wrong. There's a lot, let's just give the guy life and be done with it. That's my theory.
Well, why would it have happened earlier then? Why 8 weeks?
Earlier, everybody says timing. The timing is suspicious. The timing is what it is. I mean, they get the rule. Maybe Kohberger was incentivized to plea after the judge said, "I'm going to allow this in." So he knows that once that evidence is allowed in, then it's a much stronger case against him. So he better take the life in prison.
No, it was denied. So the
defense perspective, here, I'll give you a little more insight into representing death penalty clients. Sure. Okay, now there's the actually innocent people, which you will fight to the death, real literally. I would never recommend a person that's actually innocent or saying to me that they're actually innocent that they would ever take a life sentence or a death penalty, right? I would just not recommend that. Different attorneys have different views, but that's pretty. My buddy Rosemarie, who I don't know if you've had on before, is brilliant, and she and I are like absolutely that. We're both very strong in that regards. Now, if you have a client who's like guilty as sin or did it or tells you they did it or whatever, and you say, well, here's the legal defenses. In that case, you evaluate the case and you say, okay, to me as a death penalty advocate or a death penalty defense attorney advocate, a win is life in prison without parole.
Correct. Yeah.
Because of the only sentence for a first-degree murder case like this is either death or life in prison without parole. So win for the defense attorney is life in prison without parole. So all of your efforts are directed to getting that plea offer or getting a trial in which the jury awards life in prison without parole. So I think that's what the defense attorney tack was here. I think they did a very effective job. They got it and they won the case for their client. They got life for their client. And I'm for it because I think life should always be the top sentence.
Life should be the top sentence. Absolutely. Yeah. So let me put something else to you. What if they used a threat to Bryan Kohberger's father or family? Let's say his father, right? I don't know if you've seen my theory on this, right? But what if they threatened Michael Kohberger, which is his dad, with accessory after the fact, which could lead to 20 years of prison in Idaho, 4 times 5 years, which is the maximum sentence, so 4 homicides. And they promised him that they would not charge him if he took a plea. Could that happen?
That's possible. That's possible. But again, if the guy is actually innocent, if I'm a defense attorney for Kohberger, and Kohberger's telling me I didn't do it, I'm innocent, I didn't do it, I would fight. I would not plea. All right. Now, but if I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ethical issues regarding it's kind of swirling around that.
Yeah.
If there's evidence that the father wasn't, what if the father did know about it? What if the father did dispose of evidence? What if the father was complicit? Then, the state might have evidence that goes to that. I don't know. I don't know all the facts, and we can talk about the plea colloquy and about what you were asking about earlier, but
sure.
I don't know enough about it. If that's possible, that's possible. But if you remember during the plea, I did watch the plea hearing completely front to back. I didn't watch the sentencing because it's painful for me to watch those sentencings. It's so painful.
I know sentencings are horrible.
And I've seen them, and you know what's going to happen. The outcome is going to be life in prison. So
yeah.
Oh, look at MLS. See what MLS says in the chat.
Oh, I'm not even bringing him up.
Don't be nice to Dave.
Thank you.
Steve generally right. Steve generally right. But here's the thing, right? And thank you for the 1999 super chat.
Thank you very much. Well, but the thing is during the plea colloquy, they asked Kohberger, "Are you under any threat? Is there anything outside this deal?" And he said,
love
no.
that question.
Yeah,
that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Well, ignoring the fact that yes, there's the whole death penalty that they're now waiving. So technically, by design, that is kind of
but that's disclosed. That's discussed as part of the plea. So something like a threat to the father would not have been disclosed and not discussed. I know it's a little perfunctory, and I know that I've seen people plea to things they didn't do. I mean, and but on a life in prison, that's an awful lot to agree to. I mean, I don't know. I think he's guilty. He did it. I think he pled guilty because he did it. I think the state offered life because there's problems with the DNA, which is the critical evidence. And without the DNA, it's a circumstantial case at best, and there's reasonable doubt, and there's a very good chance that, and even had they gone and convicted and won with the DNA, there was still possibilities for problems with the DNA and appellate issues. So I think they saved everybody a lot of
law coming from it.
Yeah.
Beautiful waterfall. Hey, so I've seen zero evidence that the father knew anything at all. Here's the thing, right? They have had access to Bryan's communication right from the start, and I guarantee the feds have had surveillance on Bryan's family from the beginning, right? Why wouldn't they? Yeah,
maybe
Bryan's dad.
Once they identified, and there's a lot of accessory. I mean, I've seen this in multiple I've seen it in a death penalty case. I've seen it in murder cases, which have resulted in life in prison. In fact, one very famous one, which I can't really mention, talk about, but one very famous one in which, but loved ones will assist their family members to try to escape culpability. That is very common and understandable. I mean, if you're closest, the person closest to you that you love would be taken from you for life because he screwed up and did something very bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, how would you react to that?
And I'm not even saying that Michael did know anything, or that even Bryan, like it doesn't even matter, like if Bryan did it or not, right? He definitely was looking up things about the crime. We know that, but lots of people were in that area, right? Bryan was a criminology major. He was interested in murders and crimes and stuff. We know this. So he was looking up things to do with the crime, and he was talking to his father. Who's to say that they haven't got some circumstantial, at least, evidence against the father of those two speaking about the crime in Idaho, right? And could there not be some other evidence, testimonial evidence from people who saw them both interacting in Pennsylvania around the Christmas break? Oh, they were acting weird. Michael said this thing, which could be misinterpreted, right? There could be jail calls, which could sound bad to a jury.
I think Kohberger's a smart dude. I don't think that he'd be dumb enough to do jail calls, but you don't know. This is
3 hours a day with his mum.
Here's something
he did,
I wanted to.
There was nothing there.
I love your cat, by the way. That looks reminds me of Alley Cat. But let's talk about this, because there's something, we are YouTube commentators and we're watching this from afar. The people that really know what happened are Kohberger himself, and maybe the defense attorneys and maybe the prosecutors. Okay, they have insights into all of these questions and evidence. Okay, so but as a general public, now the family has I'd say the greatest interest. Because their loved one, they want answers. They want to know what happened and why it happened.
Yeah.
All right. But and then we're sort of another level out. We're sort of in the public interest ring about why did he do this? And I want him to speak and other, but he's not required to speak. You don't have to do that. I mean, I imagine they could have required that as part of the plea deal. But what's the truth? Are you going to believe a mass murderer for what he says anyway? I mean, I don't know if that really helps. And in fact, in my experience with a lot of murderers, well, let me just finish this one thing. My experience with a lot of murderers is they don't know why they did it. And if I was speaking to the families, and this is a very hard thing to kind of deal with or recognize, and I talk about this in death penalty debates, is that how somebody dies is not what defines their life. But oftentimes it's very hard for people to understand that. They want to ascribe meaning to death and the cause of death. They want to say there's got to be some reason. Sometimes it's reasonless and purposeless. And so therefore it's like it takes away from the value of life. But that's not true. What gives life precious value is the life that you've lived and the choices you make and the good that you bring to the world. And that is not erased by a murder. It's stopped. But the fact that the murder doesn't have sense is hard for people to understand, especially when it's someone so close to you and you love. But that's a hard concept to get around. But does that make sense to you?
No, that does. Yeah. I was just sorry for interrupting you, but I was going to bring up that it was interesting that you said that something that the murderer says, we couldn't possibly believe them anyway.
Right? I mean, I know that's Bundy was famous for lying.
But it's interesting you bring up Bundy too, because people keep comparing him to Bundy. But the prosecutor himself used that as an excuse for why they didn't require any allocution as part of the plea bargain. Right?
Why did they say that? I missed the reasoning.
Because, well, I don't think that anything that he said could be worthy of believing
Trusted
anyway, because it would all be so self-serving.
Well, and that's
trust
true.
Me, bro.
And the victims did get their say at the sentencing. They did get to speak out. And the fact that, I mean, another thing that's problematic to me is the existence of the death penalty gives people a bad taste in their mouth when they get life in prison without parole. Now, if you were in another state that didn't have the death penalty, that would be the highest sentence. I mean, it's like there's nothing that can be done from the state to bring back these innocent people.
Absolutely not.
And so it's like, but to get all focused on the penalty, this guy's going to be thrown away and forgotten, as well he should. And as far as I'm concerned, and that's sufficient in my book to protect the system from innocent people being killed and from the weapon of death being used by the state against its citizens. I think it's a tough pill to swallow for people but the trade-off is empowering the state with the power of life and death, or disempowering the state from that and assuring that innocent people are not executed.
Yeah. No one should be executed. That's my opinion. I think it's
Australia. They don't have death penalty in Australia, right?
No, we don't.
No.
So
I think max like 2 years.
Yeah, most of the world does not have the death penalty. I mean, my book lays out my reasoning for it. There are arguments for the death penalty, and I lay them out in the book, Death Penalty Debates. But ultimately, the balance is so outweighed. And it's not like, well, you're a softie. You want to save the murderers. Right? I want to put the murderers in prison for the rest of their life without parole. That's the soft position, and whatever.
But I also want to see evidence, like, and unless, okay, this is
Well,
kind of
you
what this stream is about.
the fact
This
that we
kind of
don't see the evidence, I don't know. I mean, that's a public interest thing. The state and the defense were convinced that there was sufficient evidence. And there's a military is a different qualification. If you read the book, and nobody reads these books, but they are there to be read, and they're free on Amazon. If you've got Kindle Direct or whatever, you can read it for free. You don't even have to do it. But the military is a different category of what's it? Can you take life insurance out on a death and row of immigrants? That's a good question. I've never heard that. That's a new one.
I love Silent G.
Funny. I imagine at the right price, Lloyd's of London would probably be interested.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Hey, Steve, this is another Steve. Everyone loves Angel Eyes. Hello, Steve.
Yes, Ella, remember Angel Eyes in Dirty Harry, or what was it, Clint Eastwood movies?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Steve has some kitty cats. One of them is called Angel. The other one's called Devil.
Okay.
A black and a white one. Nice to see you here. Yeah, so, I mean, I don't need to see all of the evidence in every single case, and I don't think that there's no reason for there to be plea bargains. I think that in a case like this, where the evidence is so thin.
But I don't. The evidence is not thin without the DNA. I think the DNA gives it a strong case for guilt and beyond a reasonable doubt. I think with the DNA if you've got Kohberger's DNA on a sheath that matches a K-bar knife next to the bodies.
But there's no K-bar knife.
What's that?
They never found any knife.
I know that, but they found the sheath for a knife, and people
they
were
don't know
killed
it's
by
sheath.
a knife. Huh?
People keep saying the sheath. No one knows that the sheath is related to the knife that cut the people. There's reasonable doubt right there.
You have a bloody sheath laying next to the bodies.
Not his blood.
The sheath has his DNA. Why is his DNA next to the bodies?
There's 3 other unidentified DNA profiles on that sheath.
Okay, perhaps, but he is. I'm just saying, his DNA puts him at the scene of the crime, and then you have the phone call evidence, and then you have the car evidence. And I understand, but he leaves his phone behind. He's in proximity. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence here. And then when you add his DNA next to him, he also, remember, there was an eyewitness in the house, and he matches the eyewitness description. Now, not to the T, but she wasn't 100% sure, but it was a tall, skinny white male with a certain look, right? It was dark and she's afraid and all that, but that is also consistent. Also, you have the internet searches before, during, and after, right? That's very damning. The internet searches about, and then the replacement sheath. He orders a replacement sheath for the K-bar knife, looking to replace that which he lost. I don't know. I think that it's a very compelling case. I'd want to be on this. Well, except for the death stuff, I don't do death. But I wouldn't want to be. I would want to be on this prosecutor side in that case, not on the defense side, because I think.
I agree. I'd prefer to be, if I was working on it, I'd prefer to be on the prosecutor's side, because people just believe all this stuff, right? But what phone call evidence? Well,
and maybe I'm wrong, but when I watched the plea colloquy, my understanding is that he was in proximity of this. He was in proximity, and then there was a window in time in which he shuts down the phone early morning. This is like early morning, and then there's a period of time in which he is not there, where he can go back and forth from the crime scene, and then his car is captured on different cameras. So he abandons his phone, and that's a good. I will say we dealt with this when I was in the prosecutor's office. Our office dealt with this in the Gregory case. What's the name of the kid? Gregory. He got the death penalty. It was a double shotgun homicide in Flagler Beach, and he did that. She leaves his phone behind, walks to the crime scene, murders 2 people with a shotgun in their bed, and then swims in the ocean and comes back and puts his thing. And we had a prosecutor named France, who's now a judge up in St. John's, I think. in Seventh Circuit, and he actually walked and did the timing, and the timing matched up perfectly from the time that he was last seen at his apartment to go to do the killings and then come back. They also found blood in his on his shoes and all washed out, but there's a number of things.
The blood on his shoes makes more sense, right?
Yeah.
So Annie Artichoke, I'll just read this out. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but have you read any of the documents that were released? Because a lot of what you just said was misleading or incorrect.
Okay, well, what's misleading and incorrect? Educate me. I listened to the plea colloquy. What's missing and incorrect?
The plea colloquy didn't state, that wasn't verbatim. What you just read out or said was not verbatim of the plea colloquy, but obviously. But did he also confess? Someone else also confessed, but every time I say his name in the same sentence with Bryan, I get shot down in flames. But that wasn't in court, and he wasn't drugged. So, but people just forget that. Here's the thing. Bryan's phone was pinging in the same circular radius as the house, but he can actually be sitting in his apartment in Pullman across the border and be pinging off that same cell tower. Yeah, no, I'm very familiar with cell phone tower. The problems with cell phone tower and all that. I mean, believe me, I've dealt with this in a number of cases, and I'm definitely know what's going on with that. However, it can't be taken too far. I mean, people will.
Wow.
It's kind of like DNA evidence. It can be very much misread, and I agree with that statement that the cell phone evidence is inconclusive as to guilt. So if there wasn't these other things, especially the DNA, the cell phone tower evidence would be insufficient. However, it is evidence. And it is evidence.
Circumstantial, but
it's circumstantial evidence, and circumstantial evidence is evidence. And I've got
a break in the wall.
I don't know. Did I write an article on it? I've written.
I'm sure you did.
I've written on the. I get confused with the briefing versus the articles I've written. The circumstantial evidence rule has been modified in Florida, and I very much disagree with it. In fact, my last death penalty case in Florida was a case called Timothy Fletcher, and the opinion was just issued last month. Maybe it was this month, July. It was July. And Justice LaBarga of the Florida Supreme Court wrote a concurrence on my issue of the circumstantial evidence rule in Florida, the modification. And that's why he's the best judge in Florida, as far as I'm concerned, the best Florida Supreme Court justice. But the circumstantial evidence rule is problematic in this case. Now, I don't know what the Idaho law is there. But without the DNA, I would agree that there is reasonable doubt. Now, a jury might still convict because jurors aren't as technical and objective as
especially a death qualified jury.
Right.
What is that?
What is a death qualified jury? A death qualified.
Go ahead.
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, please. Yeah,
you're the expert.
In order to have a death case, there needs to be a vetting of jurors, a very extensive and individualized questioning of the jurors to make sure that they can legitimately consider death and life and the issues involved. And in order to qualify, you cannot say, for example, I will not consider mitigating evidence. And you can also say, I will not consider aggravating evidence. You can't be decided before you go in. And it's a very long, difficult, careful process that takes a lot of time. Now, there's differing opinions on this, all right? But I think the majority view from the defense side is that a death qualified jury is more likely to convict, all right? And because the people who have religious convictions, like I would not be death qualified as a juror because I am religiously opposed to the death penalty and would never vote to impose death in any case. So that would disqualify me. Now, I'm a member of the community, and that's based on my religious Catholic beliefs. So are we really having a representative jury, or are we excluding those with strong religious beliefs? See, I think I have a right to serve on a jury just like anybody else.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people are, especially pro-death people, and I tell you this from experience, are willing to lie to get on a jury. Oh yeah, I can consider it, and then they don't. But that's a problem too. But it's a very and judges don't like the death penalty because it takes weeks. And especially a big public publicity case like this, because most people have already formulated an opinion.
Yeah,
there's that.
Yeah. What is this one say?
I think hey Ma says, I think Bryan had a chance to beat the case considering the evidence we know about, and she also said, or lack of. I think he had a very slight chance. I said all along, I thought he was going to be convicted regardless because juries just think DNA equals guilt. And we saw it in Zach's case.
And sometimes the imperfect cases are the most dangerous for the defense because people want to solve the problem. They want to solve the problem. And they get back there and they're like, I know what happened. He went there and this is what he did. And they fill in these gaps. Narcissist. Yeah, because they want to, if they think it's some kind of crime story, and they make these little, because it's like, and then all of a sudden you're bridging gaps that are the reasonable doubt gaps that the defense is relying on. When you have a case that's like slam dunk and strong and like all the evidence goes together, people say, something's suspicious. That cop, I didn't like the way he looked. I'll bet you he planted that, and all of a sudden you get the grand speculation. So you get surprised by juries. They don't really follow what we tell them.
That's really interesting you say that. It's like, okay, so maybe sometimes when it's all too easy, you might get a holdout who's like, hang on, I want to be like the sleuth who finds something wrong.
I had that on this case. Oh, this case was ridiculous. This guy was it was the greatest case. It was Judge Watson, Richard O. Watson, who was one of my favorite. He's my all-time great judge, who was my mentor. And I had over 20 felony jury trials in front of him. Brilliant judge. St. John's County Courthouse is named after him. And he was a good friend and a mentor and loved the guy. And we had this case, and it was an undercover drug transaction where the guy is on video doing the drug transaction with the cops on video talking about it, right? And they exchange the cash for crack, and it's like, okay. And I'm just like confident as hell as the prosecutor. And I just said, yeah, whatever, I'll take whatever juror. And I remember the bailiff coming to me and says, why did you take that guy? And I'm like, because I got such a strong case, I'll convince anybody, right? So I just took the guy. And I remember the jury came back when they were deliberating. They come back, and the one guy comes out, and he's like smiling, walking out in front, and the rest of the jurors are like, "Arr." and it says, okay, there's a jury. Judge Watson says, there's a jury question. What's the question? What's the difference between a beyond a reasonable doubt and beyond the shadow of a doubt, right? and so Judge Watson looks down. He was great. He says, ladies and gentlemen, beyond a reasonable doubt is the standard. Beyond a shadow of doubt is not the standard. Go back and deliberate, right? And all the people are going like this and pointing, and he goes front and back. It was a deadlock. It was a jury deadlock. It was the one hole. And when they came back out at the deadlock to announce it, they wanted that guy escorted out independent of it. They're like, get that guy, because he was back there holding out like beyond the shadow of a doubt, Oh my God.
Oh my God, what a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
There's always one.
But I learned my lessons. Still, even if you're a prosecutor, you do a little bit of jury vetting.
Silent G says he disconnected from the tower. No proof he turned it off. Yeah, that's the other thing I meant to pick you up on, and I lost my
tell me where I'm wrong on my facts. I mean, I'm
sure. Okay, so even in the original PCA, never did it say that he turned his phone off. It said there was an FBI expert or somebody who said that murderers tend to turn their phone off when they're committing the murders, but the actual data that they had never showed that the phone itself was turned off. It just disconnected from the network. Now,
can I just opine right off? Can I stop you for 1 second here?
Okay. Sure.
That type of evidence should be excluded. That kind of expert testimony is completely without scientific basis. Show me the paper that says that murderers tend to shut off their cell phones. That's just some cop opining. That's bullshit and should never be admitted.
It was just some cop opining. Exactly. And it was in the PCA. And it went to the grand jury, right?
Well, grand jury is just a prosecutor tool. They can consider that.
Of course. Yeah, ham sandwich, right? But apart from that, and I don't know if you know about the expert witness, Ray, who was going to speak for the defense, and he is a U.S. authority on cell site locations. He wrote the software that the FBI uses. He was going to testify for the very first time for a defendant, and his testimony was going to say that Bryan, his phone, was actually 40 miles to the west at the time of the murders, that they state were the time of the murders. And that's why his phone disconnected from the network, because it was in a thin mobile coverage area. In fact, it was in the mountains, which is to the west, where there is no mobile phone coverage at all, right? So that's what happened. He was nowhere near Moscow, right?
Well, no, his phone.
His phone was nowhere near. Yes, 100% phone. Yep. But his phone is tied to the car because the car was supposedly seen on CCTV footage, and that mapped the route. Because it was mapped to the route that they had put forth as their part of their timeline, right? So in order for them to show.
I'm with you, and this cell phone stuff gets really tricky, and I understand that there's an expert who would have testified to X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the cell phone stuff has evidentiary value.
Sure.
It's not going to be the be all end all. Well, let me think about if I can talk about a case I have.
Yes, sir.
I probably can't, but let me just say that there is great evidentiary value in cell phone tower pinging, but it's also very misunderstood, very much abused, and that goes for both sides. That goes for the defense side and the state side. So I really, and this is why, I wanted to train prosecutors, because one of the things I wanted them to do was exercise caution when advocating for guilt in cases with evidence, because what happens is, as advocates, and they get their blood up, and they want it to say what they want to say, and so they argue that the science says this. When
there's a bias,
and it's understandable, because you put the hat on, he's the guilty person, my job is to get him, and up. Yeah. But if they go too far, it often happens in the bullet matching concept that I have a big problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's very like tool mark.
Tool mark is very very close, because you can say, okay, this is a 357, this is a 38 caliber bullet that is consistent with being fired from a 38 caliber revolver. This is a 38 caliber revolver. It was found on it. One shot was fired out of the 38. There was the shell casing still in it, right? Yeah. Okay, you can say all that. That's good. That's great evidence. But then they say, but this bullet matches this firearm to the exclusion of all other firearms. You cannot say that. That is fake science. But yet they want to go there, and they want to say it's a match, and they want to say, just limiting your language as a prosecutor.
Yes.
And defense attorneys are advocates, and they'll say whatever, right? They have a little different duty. They can cast reasonable doubt. But a prosecutor has to be very careful about the words they use, especially that kind of science, and they throw it around. And the thing is that jurors are going to convict either way. They're going to convict anyway. But it's a false. You're lying. You are by taking the evidence too far. You're lying. And I think the same thing could be said for the cell phone tower evidence. So, and I don't know all the expertise, but I know it enough to know that it gets abused by both sides. How's that?
No, that's fair. And I think you're right in trying to, obviously you're right in trying to get prosecutors to understand that. And it's a shame that you weren't able to continue along that line in the role that you had. But look, if we're going to talk about Bryan, if we're going to continue to talk about Bryan, I mean, when it comes down to it, the linchpin of this was they ended up deciding to call it transfer DNA. There was actually a motion by the defense to not call it touch DNA, but to call it transfer DNA. They're very similar things, but transfer DNA, as in it could have been transferred by one person to another or from one object to another. Touch sounds like the person actually touched it, and we don't know for sure that he touched it there. It could have been somebody else who touched it there. He could have
shaken their hand,
taken somebody's hand, and they touched the sheath.
Well,
Yeah,
and I'm not sure about, and this is one that, like, if I was prosecuting the case or defending the case, I would get a DNA expert to explain to me exactly what the kind of DNA was there and what the scenarios, and then again, not taking that scenario too far. A good example of that is gunshot residue. Gunshot residue gets abused. In fact, in Florida, they don't even, they've eliminated the testing because what happens is cops arrest you and they put their hands on you. And what do you have cops have on their side? They got a firearm, right?
And they're always at the range.
You got gunshot residue, and it's like, well, I didn't have any gunshot. Well, you touched somebody, and it's within the scope of, like, well, okay, if you talk to the gunshot residue experts, it's like, yes, you're just in proximity of somebody who was in the presence of a gun within the last 24 hours, like a cop, right? And then of course, the problem is that it gets blown into, like, the prosecutors take that gunshot residue and they say, and he had gunshot residue on his hand, he might fire the gun, it's on the thing right here. And it's like, no, you can't say that. It's been abused so badly that it's like, I don't even think they do it anymore, or they shouldn't. I've had battles, and it's that same sort of thing. It can be you can shake somebody's hand who's fired a gun, and then you got gunshot residue. So, but now it's a difference. What if it's blood? Is it, semen? Is it, what is the type of DNA? Is it? And how, there's a lot of questions, but it's a very technical thing, and you need honest lab technicians. And I know, I don't know if you know Tiffany Roy.
Oh yeah,
I know Tiffany Roy, and I've been trying to get her on here. Yeah,
she's the type of honest person who is very much a scientist and not an advocate. So many of these lab scientist people turn into advocates for guilt. And I don't want to hear that. I remember when I was prosecuting, I had a lab tech once say, well, what do you want me to say? And I said, I want you to say the truth. Right?
Really? You're a lawyer. What are you talking about?
When they would tell me, what's going on, it's like, okay, I want to know. I want you to do a good, because there's great science out there. There was this one case, and I can't tell you about all the details, sorry. But we had this one case. It was out of Orlando. I can tell you it was an Orlando jurisdiction murder case. And it was solved by great police work and great lab work and great cops who knew what they were doing. And it was when I saw what these cops did, and I did the appeal on it was a death, and it was a life in prison case, but it was a murder case. I did the appeal on it, and I was like, these cops did it right. I mean, it was Orlando Police Department. I don't know if it was Orange County Sheriff or Orlando Police, but they did everything so methodically and so right. And it would have been unsolved had they not done that. So it's very good evidence if it's done right. There's a level of competence, though, that doesn't exist everywhere. People are generally incompetent. Competence is the exception, not the rule. And so you get mistakes and you get all this. And so just because it comes out of a lab and they have a certificate and a badge, it doesn't mean anything. They can be idiots.
Hopefully a degree.
Well, I don't care about degrees or anything. I want honesty. I want competence.
Yeah. That's true. People can have all the degrees in the world and still be not
there's that expert in
the case where I had
lied about
the innocent person that was convicted, that was the basis of the death penalty. I remember it was disgusting. This expert got up there and opined on stuff and lied through his teeth on the witness stand in front of us, saying that our client confessed to him when our defense attorney was in the room with him the whole time, and he never said any such thing. And he gets up there and lies on her. And that was the reversal. Actually, that was what was reversed, because we're like, that issue. It wasn't that she was lying. It's that the state didn't disclose the statement before the person blurted it out in front of the jury. It's like, when did this ever happen? We're like looking around. We said, objection. This wasn't disclosed. This statement. When did this happen? And this was Rosemary Peoples was there, and she was at the interview with this expert when she interviewed the client. And the client never admitted to anything. And he gets on the stand and says she admitted to it. We're like, what are you talking about? So we objected. And so, and I remember the prosecutor, who was a real slime in that case, gets up there and he's like, oh, so your degree is from Harvard. And the guy's like, well, yes, Harvard. He says, is that the Harvard? And I'm like, yes. Oh, it was like, yeah, Harvard liar. Sorry, that fired. That case still bothers me, and that's why I wrote death penalty.
That's fair enough. You don't get up and say that he confessed.
Yeah. Says, oh yeah, she confessed. She admitted the crime. He admitted the. We're looking around like, when did she do the crime? He was sick. Anyway,
That's
sorry. I just.
No, that's all right. That's right. I wanted to bring up Lori Vallow for a minute, because that wasn't a plea. That was her refusal to waive her right to speedy trial, which led to the death penalty being taken away, right? So that was also in Idaho. And her case was cited a few times by Bryan's defense team in a hope to try and strike his death penalty. And I just wanted to question, do you think that there is, we've spoken about this before in a previous stream, do you think there is some tension between the two rights, the right to a speedy trial and the right to be prepared for trial?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
No doubt. I mean, well, and I go on because see, Rosemary and I were a team, and she was my point of the spear. I'm the appellate guy, and we work so well together. But I quote her in my book, Death Penalty Debates. And she says that when she gets a death case, she says, we are at a minimum 18 months away from any trial, probably 2 years.
Yeah.
So, so to expect speedy trial.
Yeah.
Now, speedy trial is a complete and utter lie. And the reason I'm telling you that is there's so many exceptions and so many ways around it that it basically does not exist. The only thing that it exists to do is to force the state to conduct a trial within a certain time frame. So it gives the defense a power to force a trial within a certain period of time. That's about all it does. And then, of course, then there's a mistrial, and then the state gets to know what your case is, and then you're back to square one, and you got to start the whole process over again. And I will say that I argued a speedy trial case in front of the Florida Supreme Court. I think that was Jaquel Davis' case. And basically, the speedy trial right has been eviscerated. Oh, I don't know if I have my I've got a board. In fact, one of the classes I did, I have a board charting out the speedy trial right, quote, speedy trial right in Florida. It is the most convoluted. I had an engineering student who flow charted it for me. The most convoluted mess you've ever seen. Basically, I'm just telling you, the speedy trial right in Florida does not exist. And the Florida Supreme Court has wiped it out with so many exceptions. It doesn't exist. It's an illusion. It is so absurdly hard to ever get a case dismissed on speedy trial grounds that you might as well forget it. Can I be any stronger on this point?
No, you're absolutely. And here's the thing: if Florida has executed 9 people this year, I believe, and it's only August.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what our fixation is on. I mean, DeSantis is doing great things. I don't know, has the world been changed because these people are being taken out of these little box cells, 8x8 cells, and taken down to the jet chamber and injected with poison? Is my life better? Is your life better? Has crime been reduced? Has there been any great grand justice? Has it really done anything except shown the brutality of our government?
Has it prevented a future murder?
No, it has done none of those things. No. And it's just a way for politicians to pose and tell them how tough they are by taking some guy who's stuck in a cell for the rest of his life and injecting him with poison. It doesn't impress me at all. Sorry.
disgusting. Don't impress me much. We don't agree on everything, but we agree on this one. I don't feel we should have the death penalty in any state. Well, yeah, it's barbaric, and it's a method from the past, and it's time for all
actually
to move forward.
I was thinking, well, and nobody buys my books anymore, so who cares? But if I was going to do another edition of death penalty debates, I would take the first chapter of death penalty designs and also include that in death penalty debates, because as I thought about it, and I've been involved as an advocate for life in this state for as long as I have, not very long, but as long as I have, I've thought about it. I'm not certain that the death penalty is incongruent with the idea of representative democracy, just like slavery is incongruent, and it's a legacy of barbarous dictatorships of the past, just like slavery was. And it took a civil war to expunge our country of that sin. I don't think, and in fact, the death penalty was on its way out in the United States during the era of public executions.
Yeah.
Once the state figured out that they were losing political support based on public executions, they made them private. They hid them behind their little curtains, and they took the barbarism and concealed it from us. So, and then the popular support or the popular movement kind of lost some of the wind out of the sails.
Yeah.
But
I think. Oh no, I think in Michigan, David has said before that the reason Michigan has never had the death penalty is because before they were a state, they hung someone in a public execution, except it was botched, and it was very gruesome. So it kind of turned the sentiment in that state away from the death penalty. And
again, I'm 100% against death penalty, and I love Chancellor Infant. He's really good. He always brings smart comments. But if I was going to be for a method of execution, it would be firing squad, because firing squad's the only one with a 0 failure rate.
Yes.
Although, do we know? Because it
depends how
it works, but do you actually get to watch and make sure they didn't just go there first and then there? And
well, it's effective. The statistics are in the book.
We've seen you do have statistics, and they're shocking. Right? There's so many botched ones with the lethal injection.
They just didn't they just have a lethal injection case that failed recently
with a pacemaker?
The pacemaker case.
Yeah, they couldn't shut it off because no doctor would turn it off, because that would go against their Hippocratic oath. So they're okay. We'll just kill the guy with it on.
Yeah, horrible.
You never thought about that.
Torture killing. And it was a lot of people are saying, "Well, I'm for torture killing." I'm against torture killing. I mean, is that I'm a civilized kind of guy. Isn't that something we can agree on? Let's not torture people to death.
No, you'd be amazed. Actually, you're probably not, but people are pretty gung ho for let's just let these monsters suffer. The whole idea of like Bryan, for example, he's going to supposedly one of the worst maximum security prisons, and it's the conditions there are terrible. I'm fine with that. That's great. It's well,
in concept, and this is the appeal of the death penalty is primarily rooted in vengeance.
Yes, vengeance.
Yeah, and that is if death penalty debates, I try to fully flesh out that side of the debate. I mean, I was 60% for the death penalty. I was in line to be a death penalty prosecutor under John Tanner. John Tanner was my kind of one of my mentors when I went to the prosecutor's office. John Tanner prosecuted Eileen Wuornos. He was the
that's sweetheart.
That guy, I'll tell you, John Tanner was a great prosecutor, a great advocate, and was a buddy of mine, and I really appreciate him. I got swept out with the new regime when he lost his election, but he was tapping me to be a death penalty prosecutor, and I didn't really care. I was like, I wasn't Catholic, and I was thinking, well, that's a good career move. It's a step up, and I'll be good at it. And I like John Tanner, and I'll do that. And I went to the certification class for prosecutors to train you to be a death penalty prosecutor. And I was about 60-40 for it. So I've evolved quite a bit since that time. I went to the defense side and I saw what kind of absurdities that were being happening on the other side. And so I've seen it from both sides. I'm not just, I don't know. I'm just telling you.
Yeah. There's one other thing I just wanted to cover off before we let you go, and I know it's late. So we've been covering just recently, there's a case in Nevada, and crazy. I know you've probably seen some YouTube drama in your time. There's always YouTube drama, copyright strikes and stuff like that. Now, there's these two YouTube rivals, and they got into such a big beef that one of them decided to allegedly pew-pew the other one live on a stream. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This public, there's this media thing that drives people to murder. And, I'm not surprised. There's.
Aren't you?
No, I mean, a lot of people are streaming their, the terrorists are really good at it, and they're proud of what they're doing or they want to be famous. And I don't know. It seems to be a motive for quite a number of killings and quite a number of things. People do crazy stuff for what they consider fame or notoriety or whatever.
Well, yeah. So one streamer killed another streamer and his wife on a live stream. And I have to say allegedly because, he's before the court. But we saw it. And so I'm talking about Manuel Ruiz, and he's in Nevada, so Las Vegas. So the prosecutors have just announced their intention to seek the death penalty. Now, big difference between this one and the other ones that we've spoken about today. Well, we've only really spoken about Bryan today. But there was, as we've said, the linchpin of that case was this transfer DNA, whereas in Manuel Ruiz's case, the linchpin of their case is video, right? So we can see it. And also there's plenty of other video evidence leading up to it showing his intent. So there's actually
him
a video
on
of
camera talking about it, barking like a dog, you
you come to my city, that kind of stuff. So
quite
but he's still
but see, this goes to most murders are very primal, and that's a territoriality thing,
You're hurting my YouTube channel. Very primal.
Yeah. No, it's territoriality though. That's their territory, and you're in my town, and I'll show you. And that's a primal.
It was exactly that.
It's sensitive.
It was 100%. The other YouTube streamer went to Vegas to taunt him, and he was from Arizona to Vegas to taunt Manny, and he was streaming in Vegas doing Manny's thing, and Manny did not appreciate that and objected.
So the defendant has pled not guilty. There was a grand jury, obviously, to get all the evidence together, and it's that part of it's done. My question is, they've set a trial date for a year away, so August next year. Would he need to waive his right to a speedy trial to get to that? And do you think there's likely to be a plea bargain?
Oh, I don't really know anything about the case. I mean, I'm sorry. I have heard it vaguely. But if the question about speedy trial, we can go back to that because that's a very interesting issue. And given the nature and the complication of a death penalty case, speedy trial is a weird thing. And like I said, there is no speedy trial right. I don't know. I mean, what the ideal is, see, this is the problem. Okay, in a perfect world, this is the way it would work. But we don't live in a perfect world. And the system is broken. The system is flawed. The system's slow and grinds away. And so these rights that we think we have are so ephemeral when it faces the reality of the flawed world.
Yes.
So I don't know. I mean, I think that speedy trial is just one of those rights. There's some good law out there about you have to give up one right to validate another one. So my right to a fair trial, my right to an attorney and a defense, my right to confront witnesses against me and all this stuff, right? and that in conflict with my right to a speedy trial. Those are conflicting rights, and I shouldn't have to surrender my speedy trial rights in order to access these rights to, say, a fair trial.
Yes,
I get that. I'm just saying that the judges in the courtrooms aren't sympathetic to those arguments generally.
No, it doesn't seem so. It's like to set a trial date a year away when the death penalty has just been announced, it just seems completely incongruent. How can you possibly be prepared?
I don't think we can do a death penalty. I don't think it's possible. This is one of the flaws of the system, why I'm against the death penalty. I don't think we can. I don't think we have the competence as human beings, the systems, the ability to do a trial that is respectful of life. I don't think we're competent for doing that. I mean, even the best minds, and there's some brilliant people involved in some of the best and some terrible attorneys too. But there's just problems. Humans are weak and flawed and broken. I don't know. We just need to recognize that and recognize the limitations of ourselves, and say that one of those limitations is we shouldn't, because of those things, we shouldn't be judging each other to the point of death.
Absolutely. Well, in my opinion, we are sinking to the level of the murderer, right? So
I don't go that far. I appreciate that sentiment, but I wouldn't go that far. But but on the other hand, there's the morality of it. Okay, because the reality. If I put this in Death Penalty Desired too. I don't know if you've read that book, but the book about at the end with her roommate in chapter part 3.
Yeah. When
the guy had been forgotten about for 30 years and he's rotten in a cell. He's a different human being. And he's a heroic character. This is the eunuch, who is the kind of the character in the book, who is a heroic figure. I think but he was a murderer. He was a double murderer. And just randomly, even though he was heroic at the end, he's picked out of the cell and he's taken and he's executed. What kind of morality is that? I don't know. That's why you see a lot of PTSD involved in people around death row, in guards, because these are human beings. They realize as when you're a defense attorney too. My friend Rosemary, she says, they're trying to kill my client. I remember she would say that to me all the time. They're trying to kill my client. And, and she would spend lots of time with a person. Now, I understand from the victim's point of view, if you've got that view, it's like that person's an inhuman animal. But no, we're flawed too. I am. And I don't know why people always identify with the victims rather than the murderer. Because what if your child wasn't the victim of a murder? What if your child was the murderer? Would you have the same compassion towards the victims, or would your compassion be now directed to your child? So, and it's just as likely that your child is the murderer. I don't know.
That's why I believe that defense attorneys are the most empathetic generally, because it takes a lot more empathy to see the humanity in someone who's done something so terrible.
Unless you're MLS, David.
Well, I'd say that the critical difference between people that are pro-death penalty and pro-life, or life in prison without parole, is whether or not you focus on the crime and the victim, or whether you focus on the circumstances of why the person did it. Okay, that's pretty much the breaking point between people who are pro-death, pro-life. Now, the harsh reality, and the reality we all need to accept, is that both sides are equally valid in that argument. There was a brutal crime, a brutal multiple murder. And there's also circumstances and mitigators and things. Both of those things can exist in the same world. But people want to focus on, it's a choice between one or the other. You're either for the victims or you're
good and evil.
Yeah, it's like it's not a binary. Both those things exist.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a big problem with just putting people straight into a camp of that person's just evil, and you throw them away and that's done.
What? Sorry, I'm sorry.
I have a big problem with putting somebody straight into the camp of they're evil. Like you just throw them in a bucket and that person's evil and there's nothing good about them.
Well,
Throw them
oftentimes,
away.
boy, I'll tell you, if you want to read my initial brief in the Tim Fletcher case, which is the last death penalty case that was just heard by the Florida Supreme Court. If you want to see what makes somebody into what they are, and of course, a lot of these people are on drugs. He was on drugs on methamphetamine for 4 days in a 4-day drug binge. So, I mean, there was so much mitigation in that case. But it was a horrific crime. Yes. And both those things are true. Both the crime was horrific and evil, and then the things that led up to it were mitigating and were horrific that happened to the guy. So it's like, am I excusing the guy? I'm saying it's mitigating. No. So, for example, somebody that's high on crack for 4 days straight, and they've been abused their whole life, and they've been beaten, and they've been kept in a cage, and all of a sudden, and then they go out and they murder somebody. All right.
Sure.
Is that better or worse, more culpable or less culpable than somebody who plots? Let's assume Kohberger did it and plotted it out, plotted a quadruple homicide and methodically did it and planned it. It seems to me that Kohberger type is more culpable, has less mitigation, because he planned it. He has the guilty mind. He has the mens rea in criminal law terms, right? Whereas the person who's on the crack bench, who's been abused and everything, his culpability is less so. And the whole idea behind, and we've read death penalty designs.
Yes.
The whole idea of the death penalty is to sort out those that are less culpable first-degree murderers from those that are more culpable first-degree murderers.
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I find it so hard to be the judge of that when it's just like, how do we know? We weren't there. We're not them. We didn't live their life.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a weighing process. You have to weigh these things. So you have a $5 super chat. I see somebody's still super chat.
Yes, we do. Just firstly though, CH makes a really good point. It's near impossible to have a speedy death penalty in a digital age, voluminous discovery and mitigation. Yeah, now there's just so much to consider. Now there is so much information given to the attorneys to deal with that, like you're probably right in the era when things change from being everything paper to all this digital stuff.
I was in one of the earliest classes in which, when I went to law school, we trained on books and computers.
Oh,
yeah.
And I was really, I'm really proud of that. I mean, it's like, to me, that was a great advantage from a lot of guys who just computers. I don't know if you saw the interview with Mary Rose Peterson, covert jury ops. She did a thing, and she, I found in her brief, when I was doing her brief, and her husband was actually innocent, and I had to find an argument and had to find something. And Earhart in Evidence, which is the FSU professor here who writes this book on evidence, just had like a couple paragraphs on the topic I wanted, and I wasn't happy with that. So I went to the library and I pulled out Wigmore on Evidence, which is like a 18-volume set on evidence, and there was like 20 pages on this issue, and so I borrowed liberally to make the point that I wanted, and that's the basis for the one witness circumstantial evidence article that I've written. It was out of that case, and Mary Rose and we've talked about her case. But anyways, but those books, they don't change. I got to say, I'm getting so conspiratorial and skeptical that I don't like these cases being maintained on some database. I'm concerned some nefarious actor is going to change the holding on it. How do you know?
That's the thing. Like, have you been following the discovery in the Shanna Gardner case? My God.
Shanna Gardner. Which one is that?
Shanna Gardner. Rosemary.
Your friend?
And Jose Baez. Your friends.
Okay. Sorry. No, I've not.
My God.
That's one up in Jacksonville, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I know enough about that case to say that is a weak case. The state should not prosecute it, and the defense is going to win that one. That's one to watch. Actually, Rosemary's no longer with the Jose Baez firm, by the way.
Oh, isn't she?
Oh.
Damn. That's a loss for them.
It is a loss for them, but she's
them.
found another criminal defense firm. But
Yeah.
so since she's left there, I'm not as clued in. But yeah, there's a lot of problems with that case. There's a lot. And that's one that you definitely need to follow.
They got nothing on her.
Huh? They've got nothing.
They got nothing on her.
They don't have anything on her.
They got nothing on her, and it's a death penalty case. What the hell?
No, there's a good example because we want death penalty for Kohberger, right? But do you also want death for her? I mean, there's no evidence. The state doesn't have any evidence.
What would you say if they had transfer DNA on her?
They don't. They don't have anything. They don't have anything. They have evidence that
it's pop up. I leave it there. I walk away.
Well,
that someone happens to commit murder in that area. Come on, Steve. That's what transfer DNA is. You leave it everywhere.
I don't. You know, I'm just telling you. I got my theories. If I'm not
anyway,
paid, I'm paid here to commentate.
Super chat here.
Mark of Reality says, I have gotten into an argument with a judge over the reason for criminal law. He and Florida statute both said its purpose is punishment. Thank you for the $5. That's over on Steve's channel.
That's actually true. The purpose in the statutory law in Florida, the primary purpose of the criminal system is punishment. That is explicit by statute. That other rehabilitation, those other things are secondary considerations. So the judge is right in that one, amazingly. And speedy trial in Florida is useless. And I'll tell you, the one thing that state attorney's office missed out on, they never got to see my super duper chart on speedy trial. I have some charts. I have some things on.
I'm sure you do.
Speedy trial, how to beat. I mean, the things that they're not seeing, it's their loss. That's all I'm saying.
Mavka, since you just got here, someone please ask Steve why a first-degree murder conviction in Florida, not seeking the death penalty, would need a PSI before the sentence, since they're going to be getting life.
Pre-sentence investigation. So the question is, sometimes the law is just arbitrary, and I'll answer it this way: it just is that way because that's what the law says it is. Okay. Now, in criminal law, there is a little bit of fairness and a little bit of justice. So you can always kind of go to the gut and say, it ain't right, judge, ain't fair, right? And that has resonance in a criminal case. But when you start arguing about deadlines and technical stuff, it's like, it just is because that's what it is. So, I mean, I hate to answer that way, but to me, this is procedure. And if you're arguing procedure, you're not arguing justice. Nobody gets justice fired up about the 20-day time limit on some deadline, right? I mean, it's not like, well, that's unjust. It's only unjust when your ox gets scored. It just is. It's procedure. So in this kind of question, a PSI is generally a pre-sentence investigation. It can be waived by the defense. It's a report that's done by the Department of Criminal Justice. They run it through. They interview the person. They interview this person. They talk about, and they give the judge a sentencing recommendation. It's much more powerful in the juvenile context, in which you have a juvenile adult filing, in which it might have more play. And some judges defer to the PSIs. Some defer to the guidelines. You know, a lot of times the Department of Justice says, we agree, we want sentence according to the guidelines. I mean, why is the Department of Justice, some bureaucrat who fills out this report, why do they have any more to say about anything than the judge? Why should they recommend a sentence at all? I mean, if you want to just have the facts, then let the state present the aggravators and let the defense make the mitigators and let the judge decide the sentence. So why we have this report, I don't know, but it is something that is available to certain defendants, can be waived. I'm just talking around the issue. So that's about it. Did I cover it? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think so.
That's all right. Guys, my monetization's working all right. Everything's okay. Because I just got a thing come up on my studio saying that ads aren't running because my Google AdSense has been disconnected or something.
We're missing out on the piles of cash that's going to come flowing in from YouTube for all the like the $3 for the.
I'm not concerned about money. I'm concerned about my Google AdSense thing having to. It's been what? What?
Yeah,
I didn't do anything. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong?
Well, anybody that
Okay.
wants to go Google AdSense and go buy a book at stevegosney.com. How's that?
Yeah, do that. And I have been putting your link in chat as well. Steve's books are fantastic. They really
And there's a 3-book set on the death penalty, and it's death penalty desire, death penalty debates, death penalty designs. And those 3 are meant to work together. There's also Ideas and Answers in Law, which is a series of essays in criminal law, generally, not really death penalty. So if you're interested in the death penalty, I've got 3 books for you. And if you're interested in crime and criminal law, there's Ideas and Answers in Law. And then I've got other topics. I've got a self-help book called Prepare. I have multiple children's books, and I have a kind of a boys book called The Summer Friend. I think that's it. I got a bunch of stuff.
You do. All right. Well, thank you so much for hanging out. Hey, Laura, how are you? Talking about bad stuff will get your stream demonetized. But yeah, I've actually got a thing come up saying that like my whole Google AdSense thing has been disconnected, which is like a whole different thing. So yeah, it's weird. Dolly, beware, your head is being sliced up.
That is a great looking cat.
Oh yeah, he's got beautiful cats. They're Aussie cats.
Yeah.
Aussie cats, yes. I skipped my second. Oh, is there really?
Oh, we don't. Let's go back and find it.
Sorry. This one. Okay, thank you for the $5 super chat. Do you want to read it out, Steve?
Oh, you're correct about speedy trial right in Florida. I guess that means me. Hey, well, you know, I would even go as far as to say it's a trap for criminal. Yes, that's true. When I will say being a public defender, boy, I'll tell you, criminal defendants sure do know about speedy trial. Oh, they love it. They talk, you need to do speedy trial. You need to do this. You need to do that. They love to say that. All these jailbirds that talk to each other and think that they're brilliant. And, you know, and I tell them, you know, you don't know what you're talking about, and speedy trial right is worthless. And I explain it to them, but they don't listen. They listen to their jail buddies. And yes, they all think that speedy trial is the key to the unlock the doors of the prison. And they don't realize the Florida Supreme Court and the Florida legislature has completely eviscerated this right. And I will be happy to share the chart with somebody who will listen to it. Like when they were like the Florida Supreme Court, when they were revising this rule, they didn't listen to us at all. We're trying to tell them, like, and who was it? Which judge was that? One of the justices up there. It was Labarga, who's great justice. He's the best justice up in the Florida Supreme Court. Picked up all over it. In fact, I think he wrote the dissent in Jaqual Davis' case. And he was right on the money. He's like, it's so far. I mean, you know, we're going to bend over so because we can't let one guilty person get away with anything. Oh, boy, that would be the end of the world if that happened, right? If we actually validated somebody's constitutional rights and actually let somebody get away with a crime, boy, that's the end of the world right there. So we can't have that in Florida. So let's bend the right even more. Let's go even further, and let's create another exception. I'll tell you what the issue in that case was
that lawful law.
Yeah, lawful law. Yeah. I had a guy, Jaquel Davis, who is involved. You know, he basically, the cops are some robbery, and a bunch of guys run into this house after the robbery, and the cops surround the house for like a bunch of time, and everybody comes out of the house. And my client, Davis, is one of the guys out of the house. Well, he's not ID'd. You know, they say it's these other 2 guys. So the other 2 guys go and get arrested. Meanwhile, my guy, they put him in handcuffs, throw him in the back of a squad car, take him down to the police station, interrogate him for like 8 hours, locked in a little room, interrogate him, and they talk to him, and he's like, I wasn't involved. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. These guys came running in, and this is what happened. So then after that little 8-hour interrogation in handcuffs and all the whole thing, they take his cuffs off and say, okay, well, you're free to leave. You're unarrested. Right? So meanwhile, the case rolls along against the other guys for however long, like 12, 18 months. And at the plea, one of the guys says, oh, and part of the plea deal with the prosecutor was he's going to give up his associates, and he names my client. So the only evidence is that he was in the house and that this convicted felon who's pleading, who gets a better deal, points the finger at my guy. Well, by the time the state gets around to charging it, speedy trials run. So the question is, was he arrested for the purposes of speedy trial? Okay. And so this So I said, okay, there's two categories of arrest here. There's formal arrest where you take a picture and you log them in, you fingerprint them, right? But then there's something called de facto arrest. De facto arrest is you put me in handcuffs, you put me in the car, you took me to a room, you interrogated me. Gee, that sure sounded like arrest to me. That felt like arrest.
Yeah.
To my client, that was a de facto arrest. Okay, you know what the Florida Supreme Court said? That's not an arrest. No, of course not. There's only, basically in Florida, there's only formal arrest. So the police can do that to you.
Yes.
And then unarrest you and say, if we didn't book you, it didn't happen. It's not really an arrest. That's
because you're not detained or something. They say.
You're not. You tell that guy. Tell my client.
Yeah. Good luck getting out of
That's
there.
how far they're willing to bend the rules. And it was a garbage case as far as I'm concerned. And the Supreme Court just validated and enforced this of the speedy trial right, enforced and said there is a de facto arrest, and this is one. When you put somebody in cuffs and you put them in a room and lock them up and interrogate them, that's an arrest. See, I'm passionate about that, and the Supreme Court, but that is the facts. That's what happened, and the Supreme Court said nope, no speedy trial violation.
Yeah, because they didn't say you're under arrest, right?
Well, everything except they didn't take his picture and they didn't book him. Yeah. And it's like, so there is no de facto arrest. They can do anything. And as long as they don't book you, you're not under arrest.
And of course, they can lie to you and shit too. The whole way.
It's just, welcome to Florida. You're under arrest.
Yeah. Crap.
Yes, but I'm not.
See why I'm skeptical, right? I don't believe anything these people say. Yeah.
Labarga, though, so one of the reasons Labarga's good is because he was a Cuban immigrant and he knows what communist tyranny is about, and he knows what's up with this sort of state overreach and the state power. Why the Republicans over here and the conservatives are so enamored with state power. We've got this schizophrenia between on the one hand, look at what they've done to our political leaders and all the scams and the Clintons and the Russiagate and all this stuff. And then on the other hand, they're like, oh yeah, but the state can do whatever they want, and I trust them. I trust them with life and death, and I trust them. The cops would never lie. And we're living in an incongruent world right here with these two ideas. It's the opposite pathology on the other side, but both are pathological.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep asking questions. So.
Simple as that. Thank you, Steve, so much for your time. It's been so awesome to hang out with you. Yes. You're just the best, man.
It's awesome seeing you.
Well, and again, I want to thank you very, very much. Because when I was muzzled and couldn't talk, you were there, and I will just. It's a goodness. It's a nice thing, even though it didn't work out for me in the medium term. We'll see about long term, but yeah, you did something you didn't have to. You were kind to somebody that we've never met. We're all far away, and
we'd met.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It really lifted my spirits that somebody was out there speaking for me, rather than the flood of venomous evil that was pouring down on me. That nobody knew me, nobody knew who I was, and nobody knew anything, and they were just looking for every reason to hurt me. And so having somebody say something nice and saying something truthful, I was
just trying to get the truth out, and because everyone kept asking, I'll put the link up to it. Everyone kept asking what's going on with Steve, like and they will because
nothing was going on. I was being bombarded by hatred by the woke left mob. And I couldn't defend myself. I couldn't speak because I had a job and a family to support. Then there was nothing that was happening. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
So, but you were able.
When you can't put the facts out there, people fill the dots in themselves. And when you've got like a bunch of people who are making shit up and they've got free reign to just talk, then that's all the information you can get.
And there's that's the problem with the defamation is like, well, there must be something we don't know. And there's this speculation, he must be really, there must be some truth. He's not defending himself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it was so hard on me. You have no idea how hard it was.
I remember. You lost a lot of weight, and you were very.
Oh, I lost 25 pounds. I mean, and I'm not.
No, you're not a big guy.
You're not a big guy.
Well, I'm 200. I was. Now, I don't know what I'm weighing now, but I went down to 175, which I don't lose weight. I don't do up or down. I'm always been 200 for decades. But
yeah, it just made me really sad to see people saying untruthful things about you, and then I knew people that did support you were just like, what's going on? And
I could, there was limits to what I could say to anybody because I was told by my boss, and if I violated my boss, then they'd give them reason to fire me, right? If they tell me not to talk and I go out on stream and talk about it, then they could fire me. And I couldn't be fired. I have a family to support. So I had to obey as long as I was working there, I had to obey their strictures. And then eventually they fired me, right? They fired me because of the mob got me. The mob destroyed my reputation. It was anonymous backstabbing people. Nobody at the workplace. I had a good relationship. It's funny because I had a decent experience. I liked the people I worked with, the people that I got to meet, the people I interacted with. I had no problem. Nobody ever said anything bad to me. I don't think I worked my butt off when I was there. I did work, and you can see those policies. So, oh yeah, Danielle. Thank you, Danielle.
Hey, are you laughing?
Danielle here. I didn't see her in the chat. Thank you, AJ.
Danielle's always, whenever you're streaming, Danielle turns on.
She's so great, isn't she? See, and this is a nice thing. I have made a lot of friends. Oh, can I tell you something? I can tell you something. Yeah. Don't tell anybody, but Nick Starro. He's the other guy. I'd say someone else that really stood by me was Nick Starro, and he's going to come visit me in Miami.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
he's
September 20th.
Soon, right?
So maybe you guys, hey, Dolly, why don't you come and visit?
Dolly never leaves his house.
Yeah, come and see. We're going to do September 20th. We're going to do a meet and greet at a place called Julia and Henry's, which is downtown Miami. And we're going to do like a meet and greet. It's really kind of a food, drinking, coffee, pastry, like food, like a 3 or 4 story food extravaganza. It's unbelievable down in Miami. It's really cool. Big atrium, and you can walk around all these shops and eat, and there's bars and there's food, and there's also, so Nick, I'm going to take Nick there on Saturday night. I think it's going to be about 6:30 on a Saturday night. Julian Henry's on Saturday, September 20th. And hey, how about all you haters in Miami that are still stalking me? I've still got haters that stalk me. Why don't you come out and say it to my face? Why don't you talk to me like a real human being rather than slandering me behind my back in anonymity? You're invited too, right? And so, yeah, but anyway, Nick and I are going to be Nick Starro, Swedish labor lawyer, and me are going to be there, and we're going to announce it for the world. So that's something upcoming. If you can make it to Miami, man, come on, it's awesome.
All right, I'll think about it. Let's see what my schedule's like.
Right.
Slidey Pie is another one. There's Slidey Pie. See, there's so many. There are many, many nice people, and who am I to complain? I mean, I have some of the nicest PR. So many people are kind to me. I do appreciate that.
When you're a nice person, it's very hard to have haters in person, let's say, right? Yeah. Like you can get behind a keyboard and be mean to somebody, but when you actually get straight up in front of somebody who's just as sweet as you are, Steve, like,
well, it's hard, part of we judge the world by how we look in the mirror and look in our own hearts, or at least that's the way I try to do it. And I'm telling you, it is hard. It is still hard. I mean, rationally, I guess I understand. It's hard for me to understand that there are people in this world who just want to hurt. That's what they wake up every morning and they identified you as part of something. I think it's because I'm a Catholic Christian guy, and I'm a male, that they wanted to destroy me. And there's people that motivates them. That makes them feel good about them. So that gives them purpose. The fact that they want to hurt you. And I still have a couple stalkers that are these anonymous people that watch everything I do, record it, and take everything out of context and try to hurt me. And, it's something that's been a byproduct of this streaming thing. you get to a certain level and it's like, oh, well, who does he think he is? We got to bring him down. And they want to hurt you. I couldn't imagine doing that. Why would you want to do that? If you don't like if I don't like Excited Utterance or Dolly, there's like a million other channels on YouTube you can go to, right?
Yeah.
Go find somebody you support. Be positive. Do something good for the world. Why hurt people?
Yeah, exactly. No, they really enjoy it. That's their thing. I know of a few.
Yeah.
It's just like, I use the block button liberally. All right, gotta run. But thank you so much, guys. Time for the song.
Thank you.
Love ya. Where is it?
Her name was Helen. She was an Aussie. She was a fake lawyer from the future. She got on YouTube and made some live streams. Her co-host is Donnie and she dances sometimes. The words are always so loud and because she's an 803. To the attention, excited utterance. Her cat is staring through any ghost. Listen, we are sensitive.
Bye.